Our next presenter is Emily Burke, and her presentation is entitled An Awareness of Culture in a Commodity-Driven World.
So hi everyone, as she said, my name is Emily Burke. I'm currently a senior at Penn State studying mechanical engineering and comparative literature. And as you said, my topic is an awareness of culture in a commodity-driven world. So when describing a culture, a person tends to state a list of commodities, such as food, clothing, and songs. This is useful when it comes to understanding a new idea, but it doesn't allow a person to fully understand what it takes to embody these complicated ideas. My essay looks at how to embody a new culture by looking at literature such as Madame Chrysanthemum and Some Prefer Nettles, along with an analysis of culture keeping and transnational adopted children. So it's easy to think that buying a culture is absurd, but in a society that is shaped around consumerism, buying things seems completely sensible. In Loti's Madame Chrysanthemum, the French protagonist of the novel Loti buys a Japanese house with paper walls. He marries a Japanese woman whom an agency has supplied, and he surrounds himself with ornaments and objects. Despite his efforts, he feels as if he is the victim of some morbid illusion, and he refers to it as looking through the wrong end of a telescope. Also, in Tanazaki's Some Prefer Nettles, one of the character's fathers and his partner buy tickets for puppet shows and restrict themselves to consuming only Japanese delicacies. Despite their best efforts, they both merely live phony performances. Another character in the novel, Kaname, confuses Ohisa with a puppet, and Misako calls her father a pretender. So both of these people really want to embody a culture, and they try to do that by buying things, but they're not enjoying their life, and they don't fully embody the culture. In addition to in these novels, many adoption books and websites suggest that adopting parents do something similar with their children. South Korea runs a government-sponsored homeland tour that allows adopted children to participate in ritual performances produced under the South Korean state, like the wedding ceremony. And then Kim, the author of Wedding, Citizenship, and Culture, who went on the tour, found the tour to produce a conflicted sense of cultural belonging, often provoking feelings of inauthenticity and alienation. And also, just like in Some Prefer Nettles, Masako's father's linkage between culture and toy objects, in another book by Jacobson, she states that whole industries have evolved to support international adoptive parents in their efforts to keep culture. Online adoption shops and malls provide parents with Asian dolls, Russian Christmas ornaments, Korean textbooks, Vietnamese videos, and much more. We have paid experiences, toys, food, and in Loti's case, he even paid for a wife, but none of this really makes the person feel like they're embodied in the culture. So what can a person do other than buy the clothes, read the books, and go on cultural tours? If that isn't enough, then what is? So obviously, one doesn't have to completely stop buying objects. It's almost impossible to stop buying objects. But the trick to being fulfilled and to fully embody a culture is to shift the focus from objects and allow the mind to embrace the life around the objects instead. Examples are a bit easier to explain. In Madame Chrysanthemum, Loti says that another character in the novel, Eve, still continues to gaze forth like Sister Anne. From the side on which he leans, my veranda overlooks the street with houses. So from the very start of the journey, one can tell that Loti focuses on the commodities, like his veranda and the people's houses. Eve, on the other hand, thinks on a different level of something similar to Sister Anne, a person of the people. Eve also assimilates into the Japanese culture better than Loti because he is able to set the commodity-driven mindset aside and naturally interact with the people. He often fences with the locals, and he's admired by them. In addition to in the novel, this happens outside of the book, but often unexpectedly because the desire to view the world as a commodity is subconscious. So for Kim, in the picture on the right, the realization of embodying a new culture came to her while she was searching for a different culture. On her South Korean tour that I mentioned earlier, she didn't find Korean culture, but instead she found herself a part of a different culture, a type of adopted Korean American culture. She didn't feel this innately just because she is adopted and from South Korean, but instead from the bond that she formed with her tour mates. She says that the tour itself became to show signs of fracture by the end of the trip, like she was saying, how it's inauthentic, but that provoked the adoptees, despite differences in age, nationality, personal histories, and individual concerns, to join together. So she didn't walk up to her fellow tour mates looking for the things that would allow her into their adopted South Korean culture. Instead, she saw them as peers, and in doing so, they joined a collective and became a culture of their own, despite, as she says, their age, nationality, and personal histories. So it wouldn't have worked if she walked up thinking, oh, that's a very typical adopted Korean American shoes, or oh my, that suitcase of hers is completely adopted Korean American. I must have the same. Although there might have been good-looking shoes that adopted Korean Americans tend to wear, and suitcases that they've seen enough times could be considered some essence of adopted Korean Americans. Obtaining or even focusing on all those commodities would not have made Kim a part of their group. So again, it was her ability to set aside objects that allowed people with all different histories to connect. And so despite Eve's and Kim's success, a capitalistic society makes setting aside a focus on objects very hard. It's innate and subconscious to notice physical objects. Kaname and some prefer nettles describes a family going to lunch with traditional food in Japan. So in Kyoto, he says, in Kyoto, you still see old families going out to look at the cherry blossoms. So for some, this scene may constitute a tradition that could be put on a shopping list for obtaining a culture. Go to lunch with sake, sit by cherry blossoms, have a houseboy to carry your bag. You've got culture. And Kaname also says that a Tokyo man will tell you that the packed lunch shows how tight-fisted the family is. So again, to a capitalistic viewer, they're trained to point out the objects, and in extreme cases, the capitalistic viewer directly relates it all to money, like the Tokyo man. Kaname, on the other hand, begins to see it as more. He says, but when you think about it, it's not a bad idea to carry along your lunch. So this statement is very simple, but it pushes the reader to accept that there's more to the outing than cherry blossoms and packed lunches. There are the people in the family, the act of carrying the boxes, the act of people packing or watching them be packed, the memories created, the bonds created, and even past memories provoked, all of which get overshadowed when all the viewer sees are cherry blossoms, lunch boxes, and cost. So throughout the written essay, it mentions quite a bit more a shopping list for obtaining culture. So the shopping list refers to the idea that one can embrace a culture by following a set of steps that requires completion. But adding see past commodities and view people as peers to the shopping list doesn't solve the aforementioned issues with embracing a new culture. As much as it may be easy to say, aha, a memory was provoked, a memory was created, one step to embodying this culture, it doesn't work that way. Culture is living, it's composed of complex, intricate people with all different experiences. To that extent, culture is merely an idea, but it's more than an arbitrary idea that anyone can make for themselves, as Roland Barthes suggests in his Empire of Signs. It's an idea that is based from all of different people who already embody the culture. It's always changing, it's never quantifiable. The shopping list to embody culture will always downplay the meaning of culture because it refers to culture as a static and unchanging object. Instead, culture is a mix of ideas from the person trying to obtain it, the people within it, the society around it. Change the way you think about things, be conscious of your tendencies, strip away your lists and your preconceived notions, and experience life. It's the only way that one will embody a culture and be fulfilled by it. Thanks.